Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Aeon 14 podcast. My name is James S. Aaron, and I'm joined by the Aeon 14 team, including our illustrious leader, Michael Cooper. We're going to be talking about all things Aeon 14, from the books, the science behind the series, the ideas, the cool stuff, the sad stuff. We were just talking about the bad stuff, and whatever else readers want to hear about, which we're always looking for questions in the Facebook group. But before we begin, let's do some introductions. Today, we're joined by series narrator Alison Stinnett. So since this is her first time, she'll need to let us know what her Aeon 14 superpower is. Alison, you've got about 20 seconds to think about that, okay? But today, we're talking about characters, how they surprise us, what our favorite moments have been, and how they've changed over time, etc., etc. But next, to introductions. Michael, you're up first.
I'm Michael.
What do you do?
I write books around here. I sit in this chair all the time. Actually, that's not true. I tend my garden too. Summer is great for that. Actually gets me out of the chair more. But yeah, I write books and I tend to my garden. That's what I do.
I've seen a lot of pictures of a pool. I don't think you're being honest about that.
Yeah.
I don't know that much.
Okay. Jen McDonald, what do you do?
I read all the words that are written and I make sure they're in the right places, and I laugh out loud a lot, and I yell at Michael a lot.
It's
not
nice
necessarily
yelling.
in that order.
It's nice yelling. It's
well, it's all caps yelling.
Yeah.
All caps yelling. Why are you so mean?
He earns it.
Why did you do that to Rika?
I know. Jenny, I think you're next.
Yelling was the other day when I just replied with ... and you knew what was going on.
Fill in the blank.
Right.
Yeah.
Jenny, I think you're up next on the list.
Okay, I'm Jenny Green. I publish under the name JJ Green. So I'm another science fiction writer, and I'm writing the Building New Canaan series within the Aeon 14 universe with Michael.
All right, Lyssa, you're next.
Hi guys, I'm Lyssa Richmond, and I'm another writer. I'm writing the Enfield Genesis series with Michael, with the origins of Jason and Terrence.
And I'm James S. Aaron. I'm also a writer. I'm working on the Sentience Wars time frame of Aeon 14. Okay, Alison, you've had your 20 seconds. Are you ready?
Yes, but it's going to be lame.
No.
I'm Alison. I narrate whatever MD sends me, basically, as fast as I can. What would be... I like to knit, which is strange, I guess, for being under 50, 65. And tea. And I think my Aeon superpower would be, dude, I'd love to be able to modify myself like Jessica, like you know, the purple glowy, the stuff in her skin. That would be pretty awesome. I'd probably be a lot like Jessica.
Jessica's skin or Sarah's skin?
Sarah's skin. Jeez.
Well, Jessica now has Sarah's skin as well.
Yeah, I was about to say Jessica with Sarah's skin. Can I do both? Thank you.
Yeah. Later books, and Phineas is like, well, just go whole hog already. Why not? You know?
That's a great thing to talk about at some point, because I fully think people will be knitting and crocheting and probably even crosspoint, 1,000 years in the future. So what will they look like? What materials will they use?
That's true. That's a good point. You could do your
Nano.
strand.
Yeah.
Nano.
Spider-Man silk.
I know. Okay, so the next thing we want to talk about is any updates before we get into our questions. But did I already say we're going to talk about characters today? I think I did.
Yeah, you talked about
yes.
that.
Okay. Good. So Michael, have you updated your list on the many updates coming up?
No, I forgot. So I'm going to do it off the top of my head again and miss something. It'll be fun. We can play a drinking game or something. It's probably not early for that. So obviously next is pretty easy. Next up is Rika Infiltrator, which will be out this coming Thursday, possibly right before you read that, or right. You'll see this right before you get that, depending on how good my internet in New Hampshire is. Then after that will be Jenny's Carthage, which we talked a little bit about last week. I think, by the way, Jenny, we've got a lot of, you might not have encountered all these yet, but there's getting to be a lot of uplifted animals in Aeon 14, and I kind of feel like we might need to like do like a Dolphins of Pern sort of thing or something. Because dolphins have massive brains. And then James was talking about how James actually has uplifted parrots, because apparently parrots have very interesting brains as well. So it might be something to play around with in some of the future books. There is actually a planet of dolphins too, because they keep trying not to tell Cheeky about it because they're afraid she's just going to run off to Dolphin Planet and just get modded and swim in the ocean for the rest of her life. Although I guess it wouldn't happen anymore. Anyway, that's really far afield. Deathmark is up next with T, who hasn't been on lately because this is like 3 a.m. for T. And then following that, we're going to have the Proteus Bridge, Fallen Empire, Tanis Richards Operative, Tanis Richards Blackest Night, Coco Crush is coming out in there somewhere. And then I just bought the pre-order recently for the next Perilous Alliance book, Critical Inertia. And then sometime in September as well will be the next Sentience Wars book. So it's going to be jam freaking packed.
When is Proxima Centauri?
Oh, Proxima, sure. That's why I missed Proxima Centauri.
You started saying Proxima and then you moved.
The second week of August. It comes out 1 week before Proteus Bridge, I think. Yeah. So that's when that'll be out too. And then we get to learn
a couple things.
Yeah, we get to learn the evil that Lyssa has come up with in Proxima Centauri.
Lyssa just smiles. Oh, I can barely make out your eyebrows going up and down.
Okay, now you're a little bit too
just my evil laugh.
Right. Isn't there some music coming out too? I thought I saw something about a soundtrack somewhere.
Oh yeah. Those are the pre-orders that are up. As far as things that have come out recently, on July 4th, so Alison normally tells me about these because I don't check the email on the account that's connected to Amazon, because Amazon just is constantly emailing me about 1,000 things. So she was on vacation. She didn't let me know that Rika Redeemed came out. Not that it's her job. I'm just saying normally she lets me know. So Rika Redeemed came out on July 4th, actually. So that's up on Audible now. Storming the North Wind should be up on Audible very shortly, but I've also released it for free for everybody. And it's in the channel on YouTube now. And you can listen to Alison's narration of Tanis, which I really like, actually. I think Alison may have done the best Tanis yet. And there are a lot of people doing Tanis now. So, I mean, like Christine Havam did Tanis, Chris Dukart did Tanis, Tracy Odom did Tanis, because Tanis shows up in the Perilous Alliance books, and now Alison's done Tanis. Which I guess is maybe not the best thing in the world, but we're writing too many books for these narrators to keep up with, so we gotta spread it around. The album is like this close. There's 2 more tracks. Nick Thacker had like this. He's the guy who's composing the music. Had like this epic whirlwind trip where he's been like, every time I talk to him, he's like, well, I'm in Hawaii right now. I got to do this thing, and I'll be in Seattle, and I'll be driving back to Colorado. So he's finally back home, and he's wrapping everything up. So we got the 2 more tracks, and then it'll be a 12-track album. The special edition book looks great. I've got the postcards for the album, art postcards, because some people have chosen to get like a physical copy of like a USB stick in that. And I'm also actually going to make a CD of the album too, because I remember the Crate Space can make CDs, so I'm going to do one of those as well. So that's come along. I've actually also updated 1,000 books lately, so and I'll post about these will be done by the time you guys see this. The Perilous Alliance books are all now recovered, so they fit with the theme of all the other books, the numbers on the spine and whatnot. So if anyone wants to get those, and then on the Etsy store, I've got a couple more books up, like Destiny Rising is up there now, and I think that's it. Yeah.
Oh, is that all?
That's it.
I mean, really, Michael, what have you been doing?
I know. So lazy.
That's all I do.
So does he? He composes the music. Does he performs it as well?
He actually also performs. I think he actually has a couple of other musicians that he works with. So I think on one of the he told me he was going to find someone who had the right axe to grind for one of the. Which for those of you who aren't into music, that's a guitar. Who had the right guitar to do a certain part of one of the songs. So I think he does have a couple of musicians that get involved and do some of the tracks and whatnot as well.
Oh, we got to get him on if we can. That would be great to talk.
Yeah, we should totally get Nick on. Yeah, and he's titled all the tracks too, and he's actually read Outsystem, and now he's actually continuing on reading the series. He got addicted to it, and the next album we've been talking about doing, well, maybe next year, is we'll actually do an album that has a song per book as well, so that different books can have their theme songs and whatnot.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
That's awesome. I need music to edit to, because it's really hard for me to have sound, like any noise going on whatsoever. But if I can have music that doesn't have words, it's
and that's what's nice about this album.
Yeah,
that it's perfect to write to.
It's kind of funny. I write with music and I edit in silence. Just whenever I'm editing, it's just like it'll be like 3 days of just me in silence.
Well, when you're editing, you kind of need to focus a little.
That makes sense.
To me.
In theory, when I'm writing, I should be focusing too.
Definitely.
Yeah, but you're lost in your own brain, and you're,
That's true. Yeah, I am. I'm just like,
I think
your dream.
Well, Lyssa was asking earlier about like how we envision scenes and things, and music is a big part of that. Like I found this whole new genre called breakaway that's like chase music from video games, and that helps a lot. Like that keeps the energy level up, while I'm writing something, and it also doesn't stop. Like it's kind of repetitive, so it just plays the same thing, but it like keeps that level of urgency up. But yeah, editing that would kind of make me crazy, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, I've got this similar thing, only it's action adventure soundtracks, from movies, that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, nice.
So yeah.
I'll put a link to this in the show notes, but there's a soundtrack as well. It's called Epic Soundtrack, and it's just like, it's not for any particular movie. Like these guys just make what would be the best soundtracks ever for like awesome movies and whatnot. And they're super intense, and I do a lot of my writing to those as well.
I edit to a lot of like Game of Thrones soundtrack, and Harry Potter, and Skyrim. Actually,
Skyrim,
really good.
Nice.
And Assassin's Creed.
Have you listened to Lindsay Sterling and from Skyrim? That's really good. One violin and one guy's voice. And the whole
she does really good Assassin's Creed, for sure.
Yeah, Lindsay Sterling is just really good all around.
Oh, she's amazing.
Yeah. And was told at America's Got Talent that no one would be interested in a performing violinist, a dancing violinist. That's where she got her start. She was kicked. She went on America's Got Talent, and they X'd her out and said, forget about it. Or maybe it wasn't America's Top Talent. It was
no one else is doing that. Why wouldn't we be? That's nuts.
Someone made a big mistake.
Yeah, someone did.
That's awesome.
All right, what's up next, James?
So I think the next thing we were going to talk about was just generally characters and how they surprise us. I think what had started all this was Michael said, let's talk about character moments and what are some of our favorite character moments. So I guess we could start with the writers and then maybe the editors. And it'd be really interesting to hear what Alison thinks too, because I think the reading something or performing something is very different, or at least it always gives me a different perspective on something that didn't jump out at me right away. So I don't know, Michael, you want to kick it off? Like, what's your favorite? You've got a few to choose from. I mean, what's your favorite character moment? Right, that comes to mind.
I think one of my favorite character moments is one that sort of defined who Tanis was as a character to me. Is that when Tanis was on the Mars Outer Shipyards in Outsystem, there's a point where she goes off to see Station Master Stevens and they yap back and forth to each other. And then she's coming back and she gets ambushed by two mercenaries who have guns drawn on her, and she shoots one of them right away. She doesn't really wait for questions, doesn't really give them much of a chance to surrender. I mean, they were telling her to surrender and she was telling them to go away or die. And then she just shot one of them right away. And that was sort of like a defining thing, that Tanis is not just this goody two-shoes character who always does the right thing. Tanis is, got a little bit of anger in her, and doesn't always do the right thing, morally speaking. And while some people kind of view that as one of Tanis's first rather cold-hearted moments, and there's several of them in Outsystem. Tanis resorts to torture twice in that book. It's one that sort of made her a distinct character that was different than a lot of others, sort of more vanilla protagonists that you encounter. And very rarely do people, actually no one's ever called that particular moment out. And only twice have people called Tanis a horrible person because of when she tortured Trent, which always surprises me. I thought people were really going to beat me up over that.
Well, it's funny, the things that jump out. Like some people, that is the one thing they seem to forget everything else. But I think it's a really important part of Tanis's, because she learns from it. She does think about it and she doesn't want to do it again. And everybody seems to forget about that part of it too. I don't know, Lyssa, what would you say?
as far as books that I've written, I think Jason's one of my favorite defining moments is when Jason learns that the red dot wasn't the red dot. When they're in the expanse and Lysander and Tobias are like, "Hey, dude, you've got this. Remember the red dot." I think that was a pivotal moment for him. The other one is going to be something that Michael actually wrote in War of a Thousand Fronts. He kind of insinuated it about Terrence, and it's coming up in Proxima, and it's kind of big. I can't say anything else because spoilers. So
now I wonder what I insinuated about Terrence.
That there was a really, I think it was the conversation between him and Corsia, and you wrote something about there was a sadness in Terrence's eyes that hinted at.
Oh yes, yep, I remember that. Remember you actually made note of that in one of your emails.
Yeah.
Yay!
What about you, James? What about you, James?
Did we lose James?
James frozen in time.
James has become a very still person. Jenny.
Yeah. What about you, Jenny?
Shall I go?
Sure.
Okay, so I can't remember the book because I read them all. I read the first 4 books kind of all together, one after the other. So Michael will have to remind me the name of the book. But there's a point where Tanis is separated from Joe for like the entire book, I think, just about. And then at the very end, he finally catches up with her. And after she's been all heroic and brave and smart and capable all through the book, and she hears his voice and she bursts into tears at the sound of his voice because she thought she would never see him. She might never see him again. And I really like that in Tanis because I don't know, it's kind of hokey, but it shows she has a softer side and that she really loves him. So that was a defining moment for Tanis for me. And I was trying to think about in Carthage as well. I don't know if I should say if it's too much of a spoiler, because it's about halfway through the book, but there's the moment where Erin, who is the protagonist, she's the engineer who's hollowing out the moons, but she's called down to Carthage to sort out their problems that they're having there. And she clashes with a marine biologist. She catches him coming back from a swim in the sea, and he's standing in the sea and arguing with her. And she can't figure out why he won't come out the sea to argue and just stand on the sand instead of them shouting at each other across the waves. And she figures out that it's because he's naked. And so he doesn't want to reveal it, so she's teasing him. I mean, verbally.
Yeah, that was a good scene. I liked that a lot.
Across the waves, I thought that was quite funny.
I liked your grumpy marine biologist. He was a lot of fun. We also get to meet him in 2.5 weeks, which means I got to get to work and I got to get Jen to work. And Jenny, well, both. That's kind of Jen and Jenny. I don't know. We have to rename one of you guys.
No.
Good
I think Jen and Jenny is different enough for you guys.
Yeah. And we are different enough that there's not going to be any confusion.
All right. Yeah. I guess I'll allow. I was going to say, I guess I'll allow it. That makes me such a jerk.
You're going to allow it?
Yeah.
I'm usually the one's like, we need to change this.
That's true. Yeah. Jen's usually, you're the one supposed to stop us from having repeated names, Jen. And now you're causing it. What have you done?
Whatever. If you're trying to go through the whole world with only one Jennifer, like, it's just good freaking luck, buddy.
Yeah, well, I shouldn't talk. I have one of the most common names in the world, so.
Yeah, you are.
So.
Anyway.
Actually, I agree with Jenny. I think that that part where she cries, where Tanis cries, it's kind of, here you have this incredibly strong woman, and she's held it together and she's just been incredible. And then at the end, you see her soft side. I don't think that's hokey at all. I think that reveals a part of Tanis that's important.
Yeah.
Thanks. I didn't think it was. I was worried people might think it was hokey, but
No. I think it's great.
It was awesome.
Yeah, I think you need balance. You need balance. And when you've got a woman who is torturing people, you sort of need an extreme at the other side as well for her to be human and sympathetic. And I thought that worked really well.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, Tannis isn't Arnold Schwarzenegger, you know, and I didn't want to write. Well, not. I guess he's nice. He's not a character. He's a person. She's not the Terminator, you know. She's got emotion. She regrets a lot of things she's done. I mean, imagine living as long as she has and doing the things she's done. She's probably half built out of regret at this point, but soldiers on pretty well. I think she's probably the one character that gets the least introspection about all the things she's done. But I also think a lot of it's just because she's not the sort of person that dwells in the past too much, which is how she can kind of manage to keep going, I suspect. So who wants to go next, Jen or Alison?
I'll go. So the moments that are popping up for me right now are like weird little ones that didn't really affect me at the time. Or not that they didn't affect me, but that I didn't know that they were going to go down in my book, you know, at the time. But one is Leslie singing in the club when she's all like kitty-catted out. And that's the first time we really see Leslie as like completely who she is. We usually see her as a team member. We see her bantering and being all ninja, but we don't see her being a person usually. We see her being an operative and a marauder. But in the club, I feel like that's the first time we see her as a person. She's doing something that she doesn't normally do or that people aren't normally seeing her do. And in life, I feel like that's when I get to know someone the most. So like if I go to a friend's show and I see them up on stage, that's them, right? So I kind of had that same connection with Leslie, and I thought that was really cool. And we got to see some raw emotion from her, which we haven't seen since she lost Jerry, which was really cool. Not that she lost Jerry, but that we got to see the raw emotion. So that was one. Another that really surprised me is in the Warlord books. So much of what happens to Katrina and Ju on the Sithri fields is just like, I mean, that's one big moment for me. That's such a, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like the cross that they bear, you know, that's the crucible. There it is. That's the like one giant crucible there is that time in the fields. And I feel like that really galvanizes Katrina as a character. And we've seen her wear so many faces. But the moment that I love to hate is when Melanie hands Juasa the lash or whatever, and has her take it out on Katrina. And that's like, that was the only way that could have gone. It was such an effective moment, and it was, oh man, that wrecked me in like a bunch of different ways. It was very good. Terrible. But,
yeah.
Yeah, and then one more. Sorry. One more is another one where we see Tannis being super capable all the time, and then at the end, and this was really recently, but I don't remember the book. Was it no, War on a Thousand Fronts, maybe? At the end, she and Joe are in the same place, and they're gonna go kick ass together, and he's like, well, when's the last time we got to do this? And she's like, oh, it's been, you know, ages. And I'm like, yeah, it has been ages. Oh my god, we haven't seen them get to kick ass together in forever. And so that was a really cool like team up moment, because we know how they are separately, because we're so used to seeing them separately at this point. So when we get to see them together, it's like, oh yeah, they're a team. So yeah, not that I forget that they're a team in life, but like
yeah, we need more team Tannis and Joe.
Yeah, we do. But that was really cool.
I actually have half written their wedding. I just need to get around to finishing that.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. There's a reason why no one was around for their wedding, and I've got like this whole story planned out for it. It's like this giant comedy of errors, basically.
I love that because you're reading along and all of a sudden they refer to each other and you're like, what? I missed out. I feel like I missed out on a chunk of their life.
There's actually like a thing in Aeon 14, all the weddings are skipped. I've got to rectify that. Like Chris and Jessica just sort of are married all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And I've realized that's probably a bad idea. Like at least Chase and Rika, I'll probably have to actually have some sort of ceremony for that. Otherwise people will crucify me. Namely Jen. Jen will come after me.
Chase and Rika should have a wedding like they did in Pirates of the Caribbean where they're getting married like in the middle of shit going down. It's the only way.
Probably how it would go.
Yeah.
Jen has
Like be diving off a spaceship, and Nikki will be officiating or something like that.
Yes.
This seems like poor planning. We should wait and do this again.
All right, Alison, you've had plenty of time.
Oh yeah. I think I've even told you this. Very invested in Rika. She's like my favorite. But I like the thing that got to me was especially in Redeemed when her interactions with Amy. She's interacting with a child, and you have to remember that, like, when I'm reading it, I have to remember that she's really, in her mind, she never got to be young for very long, and so I like those interactions she has with Amy because it makes her, you can see her underbelly a little bit, which is fantastic because she's basically made of metal, and she's tough, and she can, like in the recent books, she's just a squad of, just a bunch of mechs, and they're, taking people down like no one's ever seen it before. And it's just, I like those human moments when she's talking to a child and Amy's crying about her dad. The dad's supposed to love her. And you see her kind of, comfort this little girl, and she's just like, and then you're like, oh, Rika. I know. I'm like, oh, see, I'm getting like all,
yeah, you're all sniffly here.
I know. And then I also, but at the same time, I like how she can go from that to like flipping right back and being like, okay, now it's personal and he's going down. Like it's done. I like that. And I like her moments with Chase. It's like in every book, there's this like tiny little like bedroom scene, but it's not really a bedroom scene, where they chat together.
In Triumphant, they actually have a bedroom scene.
Well, okay. Yes. But I like those moments when you see little windows of them together. Because again, they're in a team together and he's working underneath and that kind of stuff. But it's nice to see them on the same level. It's fun. It's just, it reminds you that she's way more human than I think she thinks even sometimes.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I haven't read as much as you guys because I have to read it and then read it 4 more times. So I'm not as far in. But that's where I am.
Hey, we haven't heard of James's favorite character moments.
Oh, yeah.
The guy who actually wrote the question.
Well, I think we wrote it together, but it's funny because you think back on this and like just having finished 5 books, and I think of like so many things, and I had to really think about what jumps out at me the most. But probably one that I was really glad worked out the way it did was when Kara, who's 12 at the time that this takes place, figures out how to create a flower bomb using like flour, bread flour inside their home, the spaceship Sunny Skies.
That was pretty awesome.
Yeah, I was trying to think like, what does Kara know? And one of the things that's really, important to the family is making pasta together. And so these are the tools she has. She has flour. She knows that an explosion or fire inside the ship is like the biggest safety event, possible. And her dad has pounded into her that we don't ever want to do this, but the ship's being attacked. They're being breached. This is what she knows to do, so she uses the tools she has. She makes a decision kind of at her level and runs with it, and it works out. And for me, that was like a big turning point for her where she starts to realize that she can't she's got to protect herself and her family, and that really changed things for them going forward.
Yeah,
and then as I was
saying, at that point, it's not really dad's job anymore. She realizes it's
right,
job.
right, and yeah, and it's funny because people respond really interestingly to the whole idea of being a parent in space and being isolated, and what you would do as a single parent responsible for 2 kids, which it's kind of an isolation story. You're in the middle of nowhere, you're stranded, and you're trying to take care of these 2 little people. And it's really interesting the amount of flack that Andy gets for the stuff that he has to choose to do in the moment with the information that he has. And I don't know if he always makes the right decision, like the one where he has to choose to, when he's trying to get off Mars 1, and he's got 2 suits, one has a leak and one doesn't. And he's also, and he's got to put his son in the one that doesn't. And he knows he has 20 seconds of air in the worst suit. Like, it wasn't a completely terrible suit, but it's kind of like that. You're on an airplane and you need to give your kid oxygen first. But like, I don't know. It's just funny the flack that he gets for those decisions. And I'm not sure that in the moment when I'm stressed out, I would do any better or worse. But one thing, so I wanted to mention Lyssa, and something that really didn't occur to me until later. But when I think about AI versus humans, and there's a character, Xander, who's a shard, that mentions later in the book that when AI are created, they don't say no. They aren't created to say no. They're created to say yes. They follow, they're there for a purpose. They do what humanity has created them to do. Whereas Lyssa, who the idea of the weapon-born is that they are kind of created as seed AI from humans. The first thing she says to Andy when he's finally able to communicate with her is no. And Xander mentions that human babies, the first thing they do is say no. They cry, they refuse. I don't want that. Feed me. No, stop. And so that was for me like a big difference with her moment. And then the rest of her development is figuring out how to say yes in a way and also say no, and how that works as she grows. So that, as I look back, that for me, I'm kind of glad that worked out the way it did, but I don't know, Lyssa's flame has probably my favorite moments with her, where she finally comes into her power, but then figures out that power is not everything. Like, she's definitely working with people that have a lot, or fighting against people that have a lot of power, and power isn't going to win necessarily in the situations that she finds herself in. So I was glad things worked out the way they did for her. So I think those are them.
Cool.
Would it be too spoilery if I say that one of my favorite moments is the Kyla and Catherine?
Oh yeah, that's
not spoilery, as long as you don't say any more than that.
It just, oh my God, it got me big time.
Yeah, that was a good scene. I think some people don't like Andy. There's actually one person who wrote a review saying that they didn't think that Andy was a good parent at all because he had his kids on the spaceship to begin with. But we see people do
right
all the time. Like, you look at what the Polynesian kids.
Carrie and Sanvi are like constantly in.
Oh yeah, but they're not supposed to be doing those things.
Well,
but I was thinking those, like, for example, you look at the Polynesians, they did things that we would think are crazy. They put a family on a catamaran and sailed across the Pacific Ocean. They did. People have done stuff like that all along. And it's actually sort of narrow-minded to think that we would always live in a super bubble-wrapped, safety-conscious society like we do, like right now. Lots of people in the world don't live in that society even now. And Andy didn't intend to be a single parent in space. That wasn't what he set out to do.
Right.
Which is a lot of what I like about Andy too. I like that he's just a guy just trying to survive. And that's what most people are. They're not like Tanis, like best of the best. Agent, who's been in the military for 50 years. They're just people just trying to get by, just trying to do their thing, which I liked a lot. I think it's probably why Rika has a big draw too, is that Rika didn't ask for anything that happened to her either. Just sort of landed on her.
Nice. And that's the thing with parenting anyway. It's one of those where you just gotta ride the ride.
I know, ride the roller coaster.
Space with your kids. That's the deal. What are you gonna do? Drop them off at a station?
Also in Aeon 14, most people live in space.
Yeah.
Space is more ideal for human habitation than planets, which sounds like a ridiculous thing to say until you think about how much planets just want to destroy everything that we make. That's a square corner. We're going to make that round. You built the thing. We're going to cover it in dirt and leads.
Right. We're going to hit that with an asteroid.
Yeah. Walk outside. We're just going to bombard you with guns.
I know.
Planets are actually kind of awful places.
Yeah, you can never escape from entropy. Everything goes from a state of order to disorder, and that's just the way things are.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
A spaceship, and you park it in the lee of a moon, it'll last a lot longer. As long as it doesn't have organic parts like a Tesla shot into space, then you're screwed.
Yeah.
So
little bitty baby Tesla on the. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. The Tesla's in one of the books, actually. I forget which one it's in now.
Well, you were gonna make it weren't you gonna make it like some sort of
it's like a heritage site or something.
Yeah. A protected site that no one can, so a war would have to stop.
I'm going to put it in one of the Sentience Wars book. Maybe we didn't. We got to get it in there still if we haven't done that.
Talked about it.
Yeah. We also buy Tesla stock, so they make it.
Especially with the fact that this is one of the subtle things that the GE is the company that makes the black holes.
Right.
Yeah, the black hole in the middle of Ceres is made by GE. Because I figured, who else is going to make black holes in the future? It's going to be General Electric. Of course it is.
Exactly. Of course it is.
Why
well,
not?
There are Nintendo references in the story that you haven't read yet from the Tales of the Sentience Wars, Michael. So I'm curious. I don't know if anybody is a Smash Brothers player, that's kind of like where that's going.
Actually, this is all a little bit off topic, but someone mentioned on my MD Cooper author page about I can't remember her name now. The Doctor in
yeah,
that's from Thomas Covenant.
It is, and I always liked her character. I didn't when
What's her name again. I forget the name now.
Lyndon Avery.
Right.
And Thomas Covenant is a terrible character, so please don't judge me by Thomas Covenant. But those were some of the first books I ever read when I think I was maybe 16 that were trying to be psychological. And the first book starts out with a terrible event that wouldn't fly today. But the rest of the books are all just characters chewing themselves up, with how terrible things are. But anyway, I always liked her name, and I was thinking of doing more with that character, and it didn't quite work out that way, which I guess would be a character thing to talk about. She does play a role, but yeah, so that name is in there, and it's kind of a reference, I guess. So.
Sure. Actually, yeah, let's segue into that. The other thing we want to talk about is when characters don't do what we want them to do, or we have to get them somewhere and they fight us and maybe end up somewhere else, or maybe we eventually arm wrestle them into place. Let's start with the other way this time. Let's start with the non-writers, because I think Jen wants to talk about how she can tell when we're fighting with our characters.
I'm really fascinated by that.
Of course, you're starting with me.
That was an evil laugh.
Yes, I imagine you do that a lot, actually. So I can usually tell when a character has done something that wasn't planned, because, well, part of it is sometimes you'll tell us in the chat room, like, oh, things are going sideways, and then, I'm starting to look for, at what point? And one of the tells is that the other characters are going, wait, what? Because I imagine those are the different parts of your brain going, wait, what? Is this really what's happening right now? What? And so, yeah. And so that's one tell, is like, I can see the characters and your brain trying to process, like, okay, this is what we're doing. Okay, cool. Let's figure out how to make this work. So that's one way. And I can also kind of tell if it's something just like really weird and out of the blue. Like if it hasn't, because you put stepping stones in place, right? They might be far between, but we can see a clear line usually from one event to the next. And so when things come out of the blue and there have been no stepping stones, I'm like, that was not planned because it hasn't been hinted at up to now. And it's not a bad thing.
Sometimes I go back and I add them in, but sometimes I'm like, no, this would be out of the blue. So yeah,
Yeah.
Michael gives me that feedback a lot. Like, where did this come from? What is this? Were you drunk? What?
Like suddenly
no,
there's
just lack of sleep.
Yeah. Like there's an entire tank full of beer in this starship. Was that like you or something?
That's one of my favorite things, and nobody like finds that funny. I don't know. Like,
yeah, well, you never know. People sometimes do it; they just don't mention it.
There'd be a lot more alcohol in space.
Oh yeah. Well, it's like the chat. I must not like an alky sometimes. People are like, how do you write so many books? I'm like, alcohol and coffee. Alternate.
Prison down.
But I don't actually drink that much. I like rarely even have beer in the house, except for summertime. Summertime, there's more beer in the house because you want to hang out by the pool and have a beer.
I thought it was hang out by the pool.
I thought it was gardening.
I'm fatigue drunk with the baby, so just weird ideas come from not having any sleep. So I don't need any help.
All right, Alison. Do you want to say something, James?
Well, I was going to ask Jen, like, so can you tell, because you've got a really good sense of the characters. So has there been a time when something like that happened and you were like, no, or there's a cat in the way? Or have you like, and that's part of that editor-writer relationship where, you know, the directions it's going, you know, it's always really interesting to me to see the way that you're like with Michael, at least in the chat, that, hey, this thing happened and I'm not sure about this, or is this what you wanted? Or I don't know. I mean, is that how do you approach that? Like if a character does something that you're just like, I don't know about this. Because you feel, I don't want to say it's ownership of, but like investment in the characters. Yeah.
Ownership of Rika. Let's just be straight about that.
Yeah.
So I mean, has that come up, and how did you guys work through that?
I don't think I call out their actions so much as I call out their dialogue. Mm-hmm. Like there are sometimes I'll make a comment where I'm like, would this person say this? I don't think they would.
Yeah. Another one you do is you'll say, where's this? Why is this person not reacting to this?
Yeah, that's another one.
Said something.
Yeah, but that's not very common. I don't usually have to call out your reactions. There have been one or two, but you're actually pretty good about that. I just remembered though, in Origins, when Tanis was talking about, there was like some thrilling kind of things, and she was being kind of like shy about it. And I'm like, why is this what's happening? She was talking about planet diving off the Marsian ring in the like creation of Felina. I was like, and now she's like shying away from these adventurous, like that doesn't make any sense. So I did call that out, and there wasn't really an argument on that one. He was like, you're right, okay, yep. I'll go look at those. But I don't really catch moments like that very often. It's mostly in dialogue. Mm-hmm. Or I guess a couple emotional reactions where I'm like, why is this the reaction that's happening? And
yeah, I love getting stuff like that. Some of my favorite feedback to get though, because that's where I'm like, it's hard to think of all the characters and what they're all going to be doing in the scene. So getting some caught like that is great.
Well, for me, that's when the characters really start to feel alive, when someone else is like, wait a second, that's where, this character exists outside of me. Someone else has a feeling about this person, and that is pretty awesome to me. So
that's pretty cool.
You know, I'm always excited really interested to hear that. So let's see. Did we get hung up on Michael? What? I lost the frame of my questioning.
Well, we were talking about just times when you can tell the characters are going sideways. I'm curious if Alison has any of those.
Oh yeah.
Okay, well, by the time it gets to me, it's already gone through the Gen filter. So when I read it, it's a finished thing, you know. So I'm reading it, and all these things that probably seem to Jen, like, you know, probably those moments where you're like, it didn't do what expected, and everyone's having to work it in, and it seems like, to me, it's a plot twist. That's all it is. It's just I thought we were going this direction. Now we're going over here. This is amazing, you know? And I'm like, okay. So then I have to reel in what I'm feeling. And of course I've already read it, you know, once, but the first time reading it through, I'm like, you know, like really into it. So everything that seems to me that I guess it makes complete sense when Jen goes through the whole process of, I can tell that you didn't know what you were going to do, or it was unexpected because of this. From a reader point of view, because I'm not in that process, that part of the process, it just seems like a great plot twist. So it kind of
Sometimes
works.
they are. I mean,
So when he
like
says,
yeah.
when she says it's not always a bad thing, I'm like, it totally isn't a bad thing. I think probably some of the best stuff probably came from those change of directions. There are a couple of times where I'm just, I don't know, or I'm kind of like, I don't know, like I think a character should react a certain way, but that's kind of the beauty of what I get to do is I can kind of make them react a little way when I read it. So if I feel like someone should be more shocked, but I don't feel like it's written emotionally there, I could just say it the way I want.
I was going to say there's so much in the performance of it.
In my brain.
Mm-hmm.
So that's actually one of the reasons I even started audiobooks is because it's I read a book. When I read a book, I'm in it, you know, and I feel it, and to me they all have very different voices and different pacing, and they all create these very vivid characters in my mind. I'm sure everyone who reads a book is like that, but I think it's great to be able to interpret that, and so so if it's not going the way if it doesn't read the way I think, you know, sometimes I'll add a little. Yeah, I'll just.
Hey, Alison, when you read a book, when you narrate, do you actually read the book first and then go back and narrate,
yes.
or how do you? Okay.
Because the worst thing in the world is to get to the end of a book and realize that someone's accent was French the whole time, and you're like, oh,
okay.
Yeah, Alison, do you have your colored?
Whoever is a girl. Oh, do I have my what?
Your colored thing handy?
Oh, yeah. I do. So yeah, this is what I have to do. So this is like a Percy Escape. I'm working on Percy Escape, one of them. And so this is what I have to do because he has so many, it's one of his more dialogue rich books. I find that Percy Escapes are because there's so many characters in him. So I have people like, I have it, so it'll focus in a second. Hold on, give it a minute. But you see the colors?
Oh, wow.
This is what I do.
And you do it on is that an iPad?
That's an iPad. So the second time I read through, I will highlight like this. So I know who's talking. So every character has a different color, and there are some characters that aren't highlighted at all because they're only in there for a blip, and I don't have enough colors. So that's how many characters are in an MD Cooper book. And I have to switch between male and female and all that kind of stuff. And I have to remember what it was I'm trying to build up to because a lot of narrating is about pacing. And
for people who are listening to this, in case you are not watching video while you're listening to this, Alison just showed us a screen on her computer that she is working from with her narration, and there is 3 or 4 different colors alternating, and that shows a distinct voice each one. And so there's a lot of voices on a page, and she has to flip very quickly. That's what she was just showing.
Yeah,
pretty much your script.
You want to keep the pacing of actually reading a book. So, you know, like if I was reading it in my head, I mean, you want it to sound normal. So if I stop and I'm like, wait, who's saying this? Then I have to cut that out, and it just gets more complicated. So it's just easier if I can be like, I'm flipping between Cheeky and Phineas. That's completely different, you know,
dynamic.
There.
Yeah.
So I have to highlight that out. And they do have conversations. So, or they did. I don't know.
Sorry, I took us off topic a little bit, but
you haven't gone forward, have you? You're stuck at book 6.
I am stuck. Yes, I'm stuck at book 6 right now because I'm working on 4, and I'm also working on the as soon as you get it to me, I'll be working on the Tannis origin, and then I'm still working on Triumphant. So
all the things.
I'm working on all 3, all the books.
Do you want to go next?
I'm happy to be working on all of them.
Do you want to go, Jenny? Stuff that's gone sideways on you? Or?
Okay. So when do the characters go sideways as I'm writing?
Yeah. Or just a funny story about when they did, whatever you want.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll do when do they go? I know when they're going sideways when I'm writing is when I veer off my plot entirely. So I'll have the book plotted out. I think I was saying this last time. I do actually plot quite a plan quite carefully. But then I'll get maybe a quarter of the way in, and I'll suddenly find that what I've plotted doesn't make sense according to how those characters are developing as I'm writing them. And so I will just go with what is coming out. And then a week later, I'll look back at my plot and I'll go, oh, that's what I was supposed to write. That's some quite good ideas I might have to put in another book, because this book's entirely different to what I planned. So it's really more when the characters take over and the book starts to write itself that I know that, you know, the characters, they're not going sideways, they're going the way that they want to go. So
yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Did that happen with Aaron at all in Carthage?
Yeah, absolutely. Not so much Erin as Isa.
Okay.
Isa Chen.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure you had a direction with her, and then she's like, "F it."
Yeah. yeah,
Get to
that's
see
right.
that.
She's quite an interesting character because she's had a very hard life.
Yeah.
So as I was writing her, more of that started to come out, because I realised that has such a big impact when you've been a slave virtually and had this really, really hard life as a miner, and then you have this harrowing escape and you nearly die, and then she chose then to not stay on Victoria but to carry on to New Canaan with the rest of the intrepid passengers. So yeah, so she really took over a lot, especially with like trying to find herself, trying to understand what it was that she needed from her life. And I think particularly there's a scene there where there's a bunch of miners are complaining because they've woken, they're not miners, they came from Earth, and they didn't know that they were going to wake up in New Canaan instead of, they've missed the whole 10,000 years of traveling into the future and everything, and they're really, really pissed off, and they're these really big, bulky guys, and little Isa Chen goes in there and sorts them out. So yeah, that was definitely an example of her going off script.
Now, has there been a time when you had a character that wasn't going to play as big a role or be the way they were, and they came, you know, to the forefront or were more interesting to you over time?
In fact, that's happening more and more with minor characters. I'm finding that minor characters are like pushing out into the book, and I'm giving them names and I'm giving them backgrounds and histories, and it almost becomes too much. I think this is why Michael has ended up writing this massive universe with what is going to be these hundreds and hundreds of books, is because there's a whole planet full of people who want their stories told.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Exactly. I also, one of the things I really, this is a little bit off topic, something I really like what you did is you gave Yusuf these really interesting dimensions in the book. Because we only normally see him as business Yusuf. For those who don't remember, Yusuf was a lieutenant in Building Victoria, a major in New Canaan. He's been around a lot. He's just sort of been this minor character. And he's actually shown up now in 4 series. And he showed up in Jenny's, but Jenny really did really well at giving him this dynamic character that's he's like a mullet, you know, business in the front, party in the back.
Absolutely, yeah. That is another good example of another character busting out from his role. Yeah. He has a very different side to him. That two different characters in the book see 2 entirely different sides of him. So I think that's going to come out in later books, that they won't even realise they're talking about the same person.
That's going to be really fun. I'm looking forward to that. Who's up next?
I think it's Lyssa.
Okay. So what was the question again?
Characters going sideways.
The biggest one would be Prime. I never thought I would be writing his point of view.
Prime is in Lyssa's upcoming book. For those of you who haven't, she's not in anything you've read yet, or maybe depending on when you are.
When you're watching the podcast or listening to the podcast, Prime is the antagonist, the main bad guy in Proxima Centauri, and he really took over, and he said, "Hey, I want my story to be told," and how he became a bad guy.
Whenever I hear Prime, by the way, I hear Megatron from the Transformers movie going, Prime! I think about half the time I see Amazon Prime as well. Megatron shouting Prime in my head.
Well, and that's kind of, he'd probably say that too, actually.
Yeah, it's actually pretty accurate.
See, some of the other AIs that showed up in the first Enfield Genesis book too, they ended up kind of pushing their way, like Jenny said, they kind of ended up pushing their way forward and having a couple of really compelling stories too that come out in this next book, which was a lot to It was a lot of fun to go, really?
The two brothers that have the centaur bodies later on.
Yeah.
They've got cool
Landon and Logan.
I love them. I want to see more of them. Oh my god.
Oh, you will. You
so
will.
great.
I keep getting their names backwards.
She's gonna kill me. Jen's gonna kill me.
Jen gets very emotionally attached to characters, and then we do terrible things to them, and then that's when the all caps show up in Slack.
I'm sorry, Jen.
Oh great, you're already apologizing to me. This is gonna go well.
Maybe it's a good thing you didn't edit my main series then.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, can you imagine what Jen would have done when Tim got taken?
Oh my god.
Yeah, Jen would have.
I still plan on reading.
It would not be printable.
We're not done, James. I haven't edited it. Doesn't mean I don't have feelings.
All right, James. Do you have one where your characters?
Yeah, I've had a few characters that surprised me. A lot of the characters I had originally envisioned as just having an influence on Kara. So like Fran, the engineer who ends up having a relationship with Andy, she was a person who really grew for me and became like this place of safety. But it was also just a real smartass and doesn't, a realist who's been a spacer for a long time and lived in a place like Krunya. And so she's got, like, I love a lot of her one-liners that kind of just came from somewhere. I don't know. And so I really enjoyed her. Petral, I would love to write more about her, who's the hacker in the story that also teaches Kara a lot. And then Fuja Wong, who is going to be, she's in the Tales of the Siniance Wars, but she was one that grew over time too, is who I saw as like a connecting place. And Ingoba Starl, he was like, actually he's kind of, why is the guy's name going out of my head now? Jadena, the R&B artist, is this guy with curly hair and bow ties, and he's a rapper. And that was like the idea that I had in my mind when I created Ingoba. And then it kind of just grew from there of like, well, wait a second, this guy's a syndicate boss on a place like Krunya, who's also like a character and likes to wear bow ties. Like, he's got to kick some ass if he wants to wear bow ties. So what does that look like, and where did that come from? And so all that
the man.
exactly. So all that stuff, grew as I was trying to think of what they would do. And they, but I would say the biggest character that threw me sideways would probably be Xander in the series, who is a shard of Alexander, a multinodal AI. So, if you haven't gotten that far, imagine, a shard of Bob or a piece of something bigger, a reflection of someone else's mind that's out there doing their work, being their minion. And the ways that he like pushed against, and I don't want to give away a spoiler, but I actually had not intended to use him later in the series. And then he came back in a big way that was really important. And I kind of realized that had to happen. That was the only thing I could do. And it kind of, I thought, also helped show some other things about how shards maybe operate and what it's like to be one. That was also part of it that kind of played another, like what it's like to be an AI and what it's like to be a piece of something else or a copy or, things like that. So that was probably the biggest one that threw me for a loop across the course of the series, 4 books later. So
I think they actually want to comment on that, and I'll do mine.
Yeah. All right, go for it.
Mine was Rika and Rika Outcast. I actually had plotted that book out more than I normally plot books out. And of course, Rika's brought to Pyra to assassinate someone. And I'm sure that probably if you're watching this, you've read Rika Outcast. If not, it's not going to surprise you when you get there, I don't think. But Rika won't do it. When push comes to shove, she's like, I'm not the kind of person that assassinates someone in cold blood. And my full intention, she was going to go, she's going to do the job. And she didn't, she just wouldn't do it. I as a writer, I like, it was rather surreal almost. So I'm like trying to like write this character, pulling the trigger, but I couldn't do it because I knew this character wouldn't do that. And I'm thinking to myself, if I have her do this, I have to go back and rewrite this whole book because she'd be a different person. And I realized that it drove me that way. And it's not like I'm like schizophrenic or anything like that, but I'm putting myself in the mind of someone else and what they would do. And she just wouldn't do it. And that changed everything from there on out. And I think it was great because it made her the character everyone's loved so much. I think if Rika was just a cold-hearted killer, I don't think the books would have done as well as they have.
Yeah.
So
Probably true.
It definitely makes her real.
Yeah.
From the gone through the filter part, the reading that part was pretty awesome. That was I mean, there was feels. Right? There was feels coming out of the eyes, and that was a great. That's one of those great parts of the books to me that you say wasn't planned, but to me as a reader, I'm like.
Well, it's kind of funny. It's like there's when you're writing, there's two parts of it. There's what you want to do, but then you are crafting these other people, and so you're almost like you're subconsciously planning it in a way. It's almost like you're I want to make a person that's like this, and I've got this plan for them, and as it turns out, they don't match. It's like having kids, Right. You got these people, you got a plan for them, but they're not going to do it, and that doesn't mean that there's. I don't know. It doesn't mean you're insane. Actually, maybe it does mean you're insane. I don't know.
One thing I was just thinking about was that we're writing science fiction, and there are plenty of ways like a person could react to a situation based on technology or things like that, but they still respond in a human way, and so that's something that I think tends to happen where the person is going to respond in a way that we still understand, even if it's, that's where the character really starts to shine through. Like, like when I plot, a lot of time it is based on the technology available or how they would do how I think they would do this or that. And then when I'm writing, that's where I'm in the moment with the person. And I'm like, nah, that's actually not going to work. They would do this, regardless of if it actually makes sense or not. Like, I'm a parent, my child's in danger, I'm going to do this. Or I'm not actually going to take that person's life because that's a terrible thing to do, or whatever. And that's, I don't know, as I think about it, that's something that tends to happen for me. I don't know if anybody else would agree, but
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's where the people, I guess, come ahead of the ideas. Is that, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's, in theory, that's where a story is good, because otherwise not to beat on it, and sorry, Star Wars fans, but that's where you would end up with a story like Revenge of the Sith. I can't remember that one's name because I think I've blotted most of my memory, where Padme and Anakin are standing on the volcano planet having this conversation, and you're like, they're not responding. I mean, in a certain respect, you're like, maybe they are. This is like they're married and they're actually not talking to each other, even though they're arguing. But I felt like that was a spot where the plot had demanded that they be there saying these things, but they're not. It's not what the characters would have said at that particular moment.
Right.
And I think that's where a lot of sometimes movies do this the most, because movies, there's so many hands trying to make a thing do what they want. Movies do this the most, where the plot demands one thing because the movie has to get made. But what you realize is that the characters and the smaller decisions.
Did we lose him?
Did you lose me?
We might have. Oh,
I hear you guys.
There you go.
Oh, I heard you guys. I guess I went poof. But anyway, yeah, I think it's one of the great things about writing too, is that we get to go and fix stuff like that if we make these mistakes. As it goes through the process, we can go back and make sure it all lines up. Whereas a movie, when it comes out, you're like, well, oops.
No, I know.
It is what it is.
The timeline. Jen for that.
They need a Jen. I mean, come on.
The biggest thing I always think about with movies is like, how many thousands of people worked on this and nobody thought that you should like run to the side when the giant spaceship is rolling, toward you and going to smash you. Like maybe a grip, look up at the screen and say, maybe they would do that. I don't know, but
That's one of those movies where you're yelling at the screen going, don't go out there.
I
Don't
know.
open the door. Why is she opening the door? Yeah. I think someone would be like, wait, there's a phone. 911? No? No one?
right. Or at least explain why.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
I'm throwing my phone away and I'm in the woods. I don't need this.
Who needs a
Screw you, phone. Right.
We might have to do when we talk about movies at some point. I'm sure we also have lots of fun opinions.
Really
know.
bad plot devices.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think we've gone on for about an hour now, so
Have we?
probably wrap it up so our poor fans don't get terribly bored with us. Jen's having a silent conversation with someone else. It's fascinating.
It's my dog. Sorry.
Oh wow! But your power is talking with animals. Look at that.
This entire time I've had my dog on this side and one of my cats, my most talkative cat, on this side. I was not kidding about being the animal whisperer.
My cat's right next to me too.
Oh, hi,
He's
Kiki.
lying there.
Oh.
And Lyssa's
Yeah, my
got two
cats
of
are
them.
usually on me.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, no kidding.
Your cat looks strangely, just the way the lights hit your cat, he looks cross-eyed. Your cat looks like he's like staring at his nose the way the light's hitting him, Lyssa.
Oh, he's cross-eyed.
Oh, he is. Oh,
He's
no.
also deaf. So yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
He's so special.
Well, nice.
He's a special little snowflake.
Carly, hold on.
Did anyone have any other comments they want to make? Anything they thought of or about characters? Or?
I'm really surprised that I didn't mention Rika in any of my moments.
I know.
It's just one big moment. I just love Rika.
I know.
I do love the image that she gets from Tanis, though. That's a really powerful, and I love how much it reinforces her in times that she needs it. So, like, she has kind of made that a moment for me.
Cool.
Because it's a moment for her.
Probably also everything that's in your mind right now about Rika you can't say because it'll all be spoilers. So.
Right.
I have just gotten used to the fact that there's going to be spoilers in my life.
Sorry.
It's just gonna happen.
Sorry not to. She was
I refuse. I won't accept spoilers in my life. No.
I just at the point where I'm like, if when you have to read the same book, like I could have read 3 times or 4 times as many books as I have by now if I was just reading them, but like I go through it once and I go through it again and then I go through it again and then corrections and I go through it again. And so it's, it takes me like, a month and a half to read a book. And that's, so I feel like, everyone's further along and after a while I won't even be able to talk to anybody because they'll be so far ahead and they'll be like, no, she's still in the dark ages. And I'm going to be like, you know what, just talk.
Just do it. You'll forget it all by the time you get
That's
to
when
it.
you're like,
I'll still be into the book when I read it. So yeah, I'll still be all into it because, like that's what happens.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's good. I like that.
Well, thanks for. Should I do the outro? Is that
Sure.
Are we there? All right.
Yep.
Well, we had one scripted and then I didn't update it. So, thanks for listening. This has been the Aeon 14 podcast. Whoa, what was that? If you have not checked it out, check out the Facebook group, which is facebook.com/group/Aeon14. Or you can just search for Aeon 14. And as always, give us any questions you've got. We'll talk about them on the show. If there's anything else you want to talk about for the books, like show ideas or just questions in general, reading order is always a big one that folks want to talk about in the Facebook group. So we're always happy to help with that. But anyway, thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the Intrepid.
See you, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
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 See ya.